Welcome to another video on focus basics. So in this video, I want to cover the very fundamental understanding of what focus is. And I come from an HTML background, so I'm trying to cover this for people who maybe haven't, or are Java developers or backend developers. So I'm going to cover focus in a lot more detail than I did in the last video. So this will be an intro video, but it will also have some new and useful information. So again, like in Lightning, we are creating nodes, and every node right now we have the inspector turned on, which gives us these divs to kind of represent them. So you can see I can hover over this, and this is div number 67, but it's this box, and it accurately represents its width and height on the screen. And now I have access to the element. You'll also notice that this element has a parent, has another parent, and then we go all the way up to maybe like the page wrapper, and then this is our root ID, which is our base canvas element. And then everything is a child underneath it. So that's kind of the standard of how HTML and CSS works. You build a DOM tree, document object model tree. We're doing the same thing here in Lightning. We have our node here that is our active node, or we say it's our focus node. And so how that's represented in code in the solid framework is I have an active element. So any element that receives focus is the active element. Now this is just a signal that represents a pointer to the active element, the element that you have focus on. And at any time, if you have a reference to an element, you can call element.setFocus, and it will set this variable, this signal, to the active element, which then kicks off some processes. So let's talk through that. So here I have an effect. I am listening for that signal. So the active element changes, and when it changes, we're just console logging that the element has changed. And you have access to the active element variable. You are welcome to listen to this signal, make changes to it. You can set it directly if you don't want to call set focus. But here I am moving between elements, and you see console logging the element node that received focus. And each of these are changing every time that we change focus. So if I press left, it's changing to another active element, and that is being console logged out. So that is the active element. Now, when the active element changes, so focus changes, it kicks off the focus manager, which makes a few different changes. So one thing to note, like when you have HTML and CSS, like this is a very similar thing, there's called a focus path. And the focus path is this one here has focus. So this thing, if we actually go $0.element.states, we can see that the state on this is focus. So it has focus. And then we can go up the tree, and every parent in that tree also has a focus state. So if we keep going up, we can keep demonstrating like every time we go up the chain, this thing has focus. And just to be very clear, we can hover over the red box and we can check the state on this. This thing does not have focus. So now every element that is in this focus path has a focus state. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to change the styling of the element that has focus. And how that works is through this idea of states. So just like HTML and CSS, you have the hover, you have active, you have disabled. You can do this notion of states with solid. And how that works is I have a block. So everything right now on the screen is a block. It has a style object. And inside my style object, I have a $focus. So whenever that state changes to focus, it's going to apply these properties to the element. So all it's doing is setting the alpha to 1, and it's setting a border on it. And then the important thing is when it loses focus, it has to have the same properties on the base style. So it will set alpha to 1. So I'm actually not changing the alpha, but I could. Let me change that real quick, 0.8. And then it will also change the border to width 0, essentially removing the border. So that gives us this ability to now switch between these. You can see the alpha changing, and you can see the border changing as we change focus of these elements, or as we navigate between these elements, because the focus manager is changing the states and applying a new style to the things that have focus and don't have focus. Now, additionally, this focus manager also has callbacks on it so that when an element receives focus or focus was removed, you get an on focus callback or an on blur callback. So those are two methods that get called. There's also another one, which is on focus change, which I think I mentioned in the other video. And the reason for on focus change is you can do a signal on there, and the first argument to it is a Boolean of whether this thing has focus or not. So it's very good for having a signal that has focus, that just updates, and you can just pass a signal into it. So that's the reason on focus change exists. So let's get back to handling focus here. So I want to start off with reloading the page, and you'll notice this blue block is the thing that has focus first. Now, in order to go from the blue block down to the red block, I'm going to press the down arrow key. And the reason that works is here's my block, the blue block, and I have autofocus on it when it's first created. So autofocus is a property that when this block is created, it will call set focus on this block, essentially setting the active element to a reference to this block. Okay? So now this thing is the thing that has focus. All the actions take place on this block or start from this block. So now I have an on down listener. So if I press the down key, it will execute this function. And so I'm going to press down, and what it's going to do is it's going to call this function, and it's going to take the reference that I have to this row now. So I created a reference to this row, and it's going to call set focus on that. So when I press down, set focus is going to be called. It's going to set focus on this row, and the row is a very special handler, a component that then does its own focus management, which I'm going to change this around real quick, and let's just call this a view, get rid of the row, and kind of re-implement row real quick. So the one thing is now this is going to set focus on the view, but we're not going to see anything actually change because, well, we're going to see this blue block lose focus. You'll also notice that all the blocks have stacked upon each other because we also lost flex, which is built into the row. So let's add that back real quick. So we're going to do display flex. And by default, flex is direction row, so we should be good here. There's also no gap. But now I'm going to press down. You'll notice the blue block has lost focus, but none of the other blocks have received focus. And that's because the row, or this outer container, is what has focus, and none of the children do. So this is where you want to use forward focus. And what forward focus does is it's a little bit of a shortcut that will send focus to a child element. And the reason for this is it kind of simplifies the whole focus chain, because normally every time you call set focus on something, there's processing that has to happen to say update the focus path, update the states for all the things. So before that happens, this forward focus is called, so you can redirect the focus to another element before all that processing happens. So here, when this view block receives focus, now it's going to send focus to its first child. So this is the index of the child that you want to send focus to. So now we'll see that the red block will actually receive focus when I press down. Boom. But now I don't have right and left arrows working on this block because I removed the row. So let's first check forward focus. So I can, if I didn't want it to go to the first block, I could send it to the green block, and you'll see I press down, it goes to the green block. Alternatively, forward focus can also take a function, and I could say red block dot set focus, and let's put a ref on this. So ref equals red block, and we just need to define red block up here. So now, forward focus can take an index of the thing that you wanted to send focus to, or it can take a function. So now we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to set focus to the red block. So reload, hit down, it just went to the red block. But if we want to move between the blocks, now we have to add a left and a right key handler. And you could add a left and a right key handler on all of these. And you could do green block.set focus. But obviously, that's going to be cumbersome, not repeatable. So what happens is if the red block has focus and you press right, and there's no on right on this block, it goes up to the parent. So we can put all the key handlers up a level and allow our parent now to handle this. Now let me see if I remember how this works correctly. So the first argument is the event, which we don't need. The second argument, oh, I love TypeScript, pops up with the target, which I think the target is, yes, it's the thing that has focus. So this is the focused element, and then this is the container. So now we have the container is this view. So now I can say container container dot children. So we get an access to all the children, and then we can set focus on that. So let's just do this. So if I have this right, we have on down setting focus to this row container, which that's going to forward focus to the red block. And then when we press right, it should set focus to the green block. And hopefully this is all good. Nope, I messed that up. Set focus does not work. So we can actually, like, the great part is I love using the debugger. We can come in here, we can set a breakpoint on this line, which let's reload real quick so we get back to an initial state. Now we press right and we can see what's coming in. Sometimes I get these backwards, which container, yeah, container is not the container. So this thing is the actual container, which has the children. Yep, so let me switch those variables around. So this is the container. And the last argument is the focused element. So the focused element is the block that currently has focus. And you can probably see, like, now that we have the focused element, we could do container.children.index of focused element, and then increment it or decrement it depending on which direction we're going. Right now, this should work. Get rid of this. We can press down, which goes to the focus on the red block, and we press right, and we're still wrong because did I get rid of container.children? Oh, this actually I did not save. Sometimes you need to press save too. That helps a lot. Let's try that again. So we're going to press down, we're going to press right, and now our green block has focus. But again, you probably don't want to implement all this on right, on left, and selected child stuff. So this is where you just want to use row. Like just use the row component. That's what it's made to do. And that way you don't have to do all this forward logic and on right and on left. It does all of that automatically. So we go back to our row, and we have now our basics of down, right, and left handling. So it's taking care of this automatically. One last thing that I will note is if you're on the first item on a row and you hit left, if you return false or you don't return true from a handler, it bubbles up to the parent. So this is eventually bubbling up, which is what's causing the left nav to receive focus. All right, so that was Focus Basics, still almost at 15 minutes to kind of explain this topic. Hopefully that was useful and explains some of the fundamentals of how focus is working, how state is changing, and allows us to kind of manipulate things on the fly. One other thing I will mention, which is really useful in case you don't watch any of the other videos, is autofocus sets focus on this, but it can also take a signal such that, you know, if you have dynamic data coming in, it will refocus that element when the data becomes available, which is very useful for, you know, the row is there, but the elements haven't been rendered yet because it's dynamic data. You can put autofocus with a signal on there for whatever the items are, and then when they're available, it will then set focus to the first element inside of that container. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please thumbs up, like, subscribe, and post a comment for other videos and topics you want me to cover. Thanks for watching.